Okay, so this is the final question for the 2019 A-level test. This is question 5, which is going to mix all the individual samples and MIDI files that you've got, everything that you've done previously. So this is now it. You're going to now be mixing this into a full song. So in the first question, what they want you to do is to apply reverb to the vocals and the backing vocals. Make sure it's a 3-second reverb. Let's pause there for 1 second. So what they're looking for here basically is a send. So I'm going to go back into my vocals, open these up like this, and I'm simply going to go into my sends. My first send is here, which is going to go to my reverb. My second send is here, which is going to go to my echo. So my first one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this one up. So as a reminder, this is your send A, and it gets sent to this reverb here. Now just be aware that this is where you're going to adjust how much reverb that you've got on this track, on this send track. So make sure it's at 3 seconds, just like that. So you will get hopefully get a mark then for that. So it's for the vocals and for the backing vocals. What I would probably recommend that you do is maybe take this in one step at a time. Let me just do my first main vocals here. Just be aware that in this, they're sort of hinting about what they're wanting you to get this thing, blend in the right way. Notice how they mentioned that the vocal and this guitar track. So I'm sort of going to be listening in the background to how this vocal here mixes in or blends in, if you will, with the electric guitar. So what you could even do is you could solo all this stuff out and maybe even solo your electric guitar, and just make sure that the reverb is enough. Reverb is very much like salt, and if you use too much of it, it will ruin everything. So don't just put this all the way up like this and not listen to how this is going to go. Now, the one last thing I'll mention is this. When you solo your tracks out, you obviously are going to be hearing that reverb. But just be aware that the examiner, when they get this, they're not going to have a solo track. They're going to have the entire mix. So what I would do is just solo this out so you can get the reverb to be right. Maybe solo out your guitar part so that that's going to blend quite well. And then take it off and then start playing these together. Now just be aware that you haven't mixed this down yet. So it might sound like there's not a lot of reverb in there. So just make sure that you just sort of play around with this. Finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this area in here, which has your backing vocals. And again, just adjust the reverb on send A for both of these individual tracks. Okay, so now that I've done 5A, they want you to import now this file, and this is an example of how this is going to sound. So they want you to apply whatever effect this is onto your track. So let me just go into my DAW. This is my drum example here. Let me just see where I found it. There it is there. So notice how also that I usually do this, I usually put this in time with my other tracks, just so I can just hear this. Let me just solo this out. Now, let's just pretend you didn't know the effect at all and you were sort of just like guessing about it. One thing that you can do is open up your editor, and you can sort of see now that you got this transient and then you've got the echo here happening, right? So, yeah, you can just see it here. So now that you've identified what this is, it is an echo on this track. You're going to go back into your drum track and you're going to apply that effect to your drum track. So let me just close this down and open up my drum track like this. So in Ableton, what I'm going to do is open up my editor, double click inside of this. I'm going to go back into my drum rack. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put an echo onto this snare drum. So again, this is my snare drum here that I've chosen. And again, if you need to go into this is where it is. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my audio effects. I don't recommend that you put a delay on this, and I'll explain that later. So I'm going to go into echo, and all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to drag that onto this. So now I've got this echo on that individual snare drum track. Let me just back up for 1 second. I'm not going to drag and drop this echo onto that track. Notice what this does is it puts the echo after your drum rack. That means that all of these ride cymbals, crash cymbals, everything is going to be sent through this echo, and that's not what I want. That's not what edX are asking you to do. So drag this echo onto your snare drum track like this. Notice how this is now inside of this. and not on the outside at all. So now that you've got that, you are probably going to get a mark for the correct effect. So within this, just be aware that really what they're probably going to play with are a handful of stuff. It's probably going to be synced to your BPM. So again, what you might want to do is just play around with how fast this is. It's probably not going to be on a dotted rhythm. It could be on your notes. So again, just have a listen to this back and forth and make sure that your notes are not dotted at all. And then finally, I would recommend that this feedback, that you might want to play around with this feedback. So with this, let me just see if I can just hear this really, really fast to make sure that it doesn't sound horrible. So right now you can't hear this, but there's too much in this. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of play around with this feedback and this sync and just until I get the right sort of sound. Yeah, maybe even also my dry and my wet. But yeah, essentially that's it. That's what you want to do. Yeah, so there you got 5B. For 5C, what they want you to do is they want you to listen to this modulation effect on the guitar part and recreate it. So this is another one of these. I won't wait to hear this and then apply it, which is quite common within Edexcel. So the guitar track is here. Let me just open that one up, solo this one out. And what you'll hear is in the beginning of this is a tremolo effect. So again, go into your audio effects. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different. Some students, they try and search for an effect that will play around with the volume of this going in and out. I find it a lot easier to recommend to my students that they use an auto pan on this. So all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to drag and drop this auto pan on. I'm going to adjust some of these controls within the auto pan. The first thing is this. It's not going to be on hertz. Make sure that it's on beats. I'm going to turn my amount all the way up. I'm going to leave my rate as it is. I'm going to use my phase. Let's turn that all the way down like this. And then my shape all the way up. Okay, so again, amount all the way up. Leave your rate for a second. Phase down and then shape all the way up. For me, I'm probably going to leave it on sine wave just for a quick second. What this will do is it will essentially take out the sounds out of this. So, oh, that was stupid. I'm so sorry. I am very tired. Taking this pan, I move this onto my vocal track. Whoops. Let me move this now to my proper track, which is my guitar track. And there it is. Let me just make sure this is on around. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So the only thing that I would recommend is this. The modulation effect. They say recreate the effect. The only thing is, there's two things actually. This effect should not be turned on during the effect that is actually on the instrument, which is here. So in other words, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go into your automation and you're going to have to automate this thing to go on and off. Just on like this and then turn this thing on like that. I don't know which bars has the effect, which doesn't, but just listen to this and you'll hear it. Okay, the other thing is this. With the modulation effect, I have just dragged and dropped this one on. You might want to play around with this and just make sure that the amount or the shape of this sounds like the original. That's what I would recommend. Okay, so for 5D, this is not going to be gating your vocals. Again, I'll just make sure that I'm on the right track this time. My gating of my vocals, drag and drop a gate on there. This is asking you to do bars 34 to 35. So again, all I'm going to do is let me just zoom out. 34 to 35 is in here on my vocal track. So all I'm going to do is just highlight these here on 36. Can't recommend this more than enough. Loop it so that this is going to show you, it's going to be a visual of that's exactly what areas I need to manipulate in my gate. So now that you got that right, the bass track should trigger the side chain of this gate. Pause it there. So on this gate, turn your side chain on. The audio from goes into your bass. Yep. So now that that's been side chained in there, it should the vocal. Yep, and the reverb should not be gated. Okay. I think that's it. One thing that I would recommend is this. I always tell my students too. Pull this floor down, and also again, you might need to mess around with your threshold, your attack, and your release. Just make sure that this is actually going to not trigger anything else. But yeah, just go ahead and play around with that. So that should, yeah, have done that one. Listen to the effect in bars 43. So again, Edexcel really pushing this idea of listening. So listen to this one, apply the effect, listen to what's happening here. Okay, so bar 43 of this bass. Pause it right there. You're doing now your bass. So let me just open up the bass right here. They want you to do bars 43, which is here. So listen to the effect on bar 43. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight that. I'm going to loop it again. Sorry, let me solo this one out. So there's obviously some distortion on there. Okay, cool. So now that I know what the effect is, and if I can just say this, that the effect is here. Don't really understand why Edexcel did that. If they have the effect here, they've already told you what it is there. Anyways, there's a distortion on that. They want you to recreate it for bars 20 to 42. So all I'm going to do is this, is on that track, I'm going to highlight bars 22 to 42, yeah. So highlight bars 20, which is, let's do this, bars 20, which is here, all the way up to 42. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? Which is right there. So again, highlight it, loop it. That's where exactly that this effect needs to take place. So I'm now going to recreate this effect. So they're talking about this dry here, and then a wet. That tells me that I need to really have two different tracks. So because they want this to be not affected at all, I'm going to highlight this, and I'm just going to duplicate it. Now, on this, I only really need, don't I, this area in there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all of this. Yep, I'm going to get rid of all of that because I don't need it. And the same thing goes over here. Get rid of it. This is all I need. So now that I've got that and it's been duplicated, the additional signal, which I've just duplicated, should be pitch shifted up by the octave and heavily distorted. Pause there. So pitch shifted up by the octave. Open up your editor within Ableton, make sure that your warp is on, and this pitch should go up by the octave, which is just 12. So now that you've got your 12 in there, this should now be pitch shifted up by the octave. And again, if you needed to solo out both of these, and there we go. Both of these are going to be pitch shifted, heavily distorted. So all I'm going to do is this, is I'm going to go into my audio effects, and I'll just, for this, I'll just drag onto an amplifier. So here's my amplifier. It does say heavily. So when I heard, or sorry, when I saw this, I immediately thought, okay, let me turn on this amp and I'll just do heavy. Okay, a little bit too much, but I'll get back to that in a second. So balance this dry and the affected signal so that they're equal in volume. So the next thing that you want to do is just take this volume and that volume and just make sure that they're roughly the same, but it's the same as far as what you're hearing. So again, the distortion is going to add a little bit more to it, so maybe just pull that one down a little bit, right? And if you needed to, you can always go back to bar 43 and listen to it, what that sounds like. So now that you've got the both of these dry and this wet, they now want you to pan this distorted part to match bar 43. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, it's left. So just go into your duplicated file, make sure that the C, which is center, goes all the way to your left. And that is it. On the amp issue, I might go in there and just play around with a handful of things just to get my my idea about how the distortion sounds, because you don't want it to sound too off from the original. Okay, so that's 6 marker. That's quite a big one. Okay, balancing. Okay, so balancing. The first thing I want you to do is just recognize what Edexcel have done here to these files. Look how quiet this file is. Look how quiet this file is, as opposed to this bass. So I'm already aware from the visual that I'm probably going to need to take this, well, and this, down in my mix. And I'm probably going to have to leave these roughly where they are, roughly. So what I would recommend is that just having that in the back of your mind about these two. Now, again, don't forget that they've already talked about volume here. So if you do reduce this bass down, you're going to have to reduce this one down as well, because you've already mixed this, haven't you? You've already got that to sound quite good. Okay, so you got those two here. And then again, what I would probably recommend, this is just how you might want to approach it. Your vocals, maybe just solo out your vocals and then get your drums in there. And what you could do is just listen to these and mix these quite well. So right now my drum's a little bit too loud, so pull these one down. So I pull these down a little bit. Once you got your drums in to be a good place, you might want to just bring this back, only because you know it's going to be quite quiet. Again, a little bit too loud, but you get the idea. And then finally, take this off solo and just make sure that the bass, which is your loudest track, or probably going to be your loudest track, isn't going to be too loud for your other tracks. So that's how you'd balance this out. Now, producing this, this is a standard question within Edexcel. By now, you should know how to do this, which is very, very simple, I think. Okay, so they don't want you to have anything cut at the beginning or at the end. So any reverb tail, any echo, anything, don't cut it off at all. Silence at the start and at the end cannot exceed 1 second. So let me just zoom in a bit into this first part here. Notice how in the first part, so I got my time down here, and let me just zoom out a little bit so you can just see this. So my time is down here, and basically by 1.3, this is my first second. This is quite common with Edexcel. So basically by 1.3 on that second, anything past a second that they're going to mark you down on. So technically, the music starts here at bar 2. So this is just how I would do this. I would probably recommend at 1.4 you're gonna bounce this out. And I'll get back to that in just a second. So now that I've got an idea about 1.4, I'm gonna go back to my very, very end, and I'm just gonna listen to this again and just make sure that there's no reverb tail, there's no echo, there's no effect that is being used, and there is. So roughly about right here is what I'm hearing no more. So that's going to be 46, roughly 0.2, and yeah. So once you know the beginning and the end, what you can do is you can export this, and again, notice how I can move this to 1.4, and I think I said 46.1 or 0.2, 46 like that, and then 0.2. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing this is you can always cut back to where you think that the end of this is, just like that. And the same thing goes for here. Cut this back to I think 1.4 was it. So that's 1.4 there. And again, just start cutting back all these. And then what you could do is simply just highlight all of this, and then again just export it out. Just do this. Make sure it's on WAV. Export it out, and that is it. Let me know if there's any questions.